Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick, and this is your other host,
Christina Fasonic. How are you this evening, Damien?
I am enjoying the last of what I understand to be the last of the warm weather. I took my students outside today and pointed out the postcard nature with the nice manicured lawn in front of the brick buildings and the just starting to turn leaves. It was like an advertisement for going to college in the northeastern United States.
Just so happens that's where you were. So I don't like the cold weather. As you know, it's coming, and I was seething the whole afternoon because I could feel the cold weather coming in. It's just too depressing. But anyways, that's not what we came here to talk about. We have a new writer on this evening. Would you like me to introduce him?
I think that would be great. Is this the writer that we met in Ebensburg, Pennsylvania at the Festival of the Book in the Alleghenies?
Absolutely. Yes. We met a lot of cool people there from the library, from writers, all kinds of things. And
Readers. We met readers.
and our guest tonight is one of those people. So allow me to introduce him. Michael Lockett holds a BA in communication from Clarion University, one of our, well, it used to be a sister school, but now they're one of us. We're all one thing. And an MFA in creative writing from Carlow University. His stories are published in the Northern Appalachia Review, Prometheus Dreaming, Twisted Vine, Hive Avenue, Taint, 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 Matthew's Place through the Matthew Shepard Foundation, History Through Fiction, and Quarter Press. His short story collection, In the Cut, is published by Sunbury's Catamount Press. And of course, you can find him at his website, michaellockettauthor.com, which is posted with this video on our Facebook page. Shall we bring him out?
Bring him out.
Thank you, Damien and Christina. So I'm going to be reading a story called More Than an Accident from my short story collection, In the Cut, which is, of course, available right now. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm dreading winter too.
Yes.
It's miserable here, but it's good for character. That's why we're all so mean up here, I think.
That's what it is. All right.
Before that. All right. Great to have you on. Let's hear what you've. Let's hear some fiction.
All right, I got some fiction for you, Damien. So again, this piece is called More Than an Accident. I stood in the back of the funeral parlor next to Great Uncle Walter. I looked away to avoid the photo of the accident in his hand. I'd already seen it 3 times, though Mom told me not to look, and I feared I'd be caught sneaking another peek. Cold air came from the vents in the ceiling. Sad hymns played in the room. There were around 20 people there. 2 stood at Butch's urn. 2 greeted my father and grandparents who sat in the front row. Some, like my mom and Miss Lorraine, sat talking in the back rows of chairs. Others stood whispering in the corners of the room. Beside Uncle Butch's urn, there were blue flowers Mom called carnations spread out like peacock feathers. Their strange smell filled the room. They didn't smell sweet and rosy like the ones in the yard, but more like powder in the air in the freezer at home. When I turned back to Uncle Walter, he stood with his magnifying glass showing some man the photo of Uncle Butch's crash. I looked towards Mom to be sure she wasn't watching me. I looked again at the photo. The charred-out cab of Uncle Butch's truck was turned around on the railroad tracks. The engine of the train was stuck into its side. Walter put the magnifying glass close to the photo to show the man Butch's skull, which could be seen through the dark cab in the driver's seat of the truck. The man let out a gasp. The train dragged the truck some 500 feet. That explosion knocked the engine from the track, Walter said. I noticed Mom turn. She gave me a come here curl of the finger, so I went to her through an aisle of chairs. I'd expected she'd scold me for looking at the picture again. Sit here, she said. I sat in the cold metal folding chair beside her. Miss Lorraine was turned in her seat in the aisle in front of us. How old are you? She asked me. She pinched the corner of her rose-tinted glasses with her finger and her thumb and looked me over. 9, I said. And aren't you a picture of Uncle Butch and your dad when they were boys, Miss Lorraine said. I should know, I babysat them. Didn't they give me a hard time? You don't do that to your mom, she asked. No, ma'am, I said. My dad sat just ahead of us next to my grandparents. The back of his arm rested on the empty chair beside him in view of Butch's urn. I looked past Dad's curled-up fists to the urn. Seeing the urn, I couldn't help but wonder how they'd fit Butch into such a small thing, I asked Mom. They turned his bone into ashes like a powder, she said. Is his spirit in there? I asked. Oh, no, the spirit goes back to God who gave it, Mom said. Oh, I said. What do you remember most about your uncle? Miss Lorraine asked me. Her face moved into my view like the moon into the night sky. I caught the old lady perfume of her and the lifesaver breath mint that rolled in her tongue when she spoke. Her eyes tightened, and crow's feet filled the corners of them when she forced a smile. His goat Lucifer, I said. A billy goat, she said, named Lucifer. Then she puffed her shoulders, drew her head back, and shook it. That Butch, that's a bad thing to do, name a goat after the devil. You had about 30 seconds to get from the car to Butch's trailer door before Lucifer was bucking at your rear, Mom said. That goat and Butch were a lot alike. Just about then, old Aunt May came through the door and caught my eye. She wore a long black dress and a hair covering on her head. She stopped at the urn and put her hand on it. She stood there for a while, then turned to my grandparents and my dad with a hanky under her nose. Aunt May, the old-time Pentecost, Miss Lorraine said. Folks don't dress holiness like that anymore, Mom said. Aunt May joined hands with my dad and grandparents. She prayed in tongues and swayed. Her teeth chattered and her head quivered. The prayer grew to a wail that hurt my ears. I pressed my head into my mom, and she put her arm around me. Don't fear the Holy Spirit, Mom whispered. Then she kissed me on the head. My father raised his arm in the air. Bless the Lord, he said. Then he started to pray in tongues, too. Dad was a minister. Uncle Butch always called him Reverend Ike after the preacher on the radio. Mom said this wasn't nice because Reverend Ike was a crook. After the prayer died down, a hush fell over the room. I thought more about Miss Lorraine's question. I remember most of the day we were visiting Uncle Butch's trailer. While my dad was in the yard, Butch asked Mom why she had bruises on her neck. Butch went outside. I watched from the screen door as he raised his fist to my dad like a prize fighter. I'll teach you to cuff up your wife, he said. Then Uncle Butch and my dad went rounds. Lucifer sprinted around them, making his terrible meh sound. Uncle Butch gave my dad a bloody nose. Butch was always up to some trouble, Miss Lorraine said. I was at that tent revival at Moss Creek, and Butch was cutting up in his seat. Reverend Hugel stopped preaching and called him out in front of everyone. Young man, if you don't stop playing games with God, you'll die a fiery death, Reverend said. Butch walked out, never stepped foot in a church after that, as far as I know. Mom shook her head and lowered it. She locked her fingers together over her lap. They say that stayed with Butch, Mom said. He went AWOL from the army, afraid he'd die in a blast. He'd freeze to death before he let a kerosene heater in that old trailer of his turn to the drink, but never to the Lord. Miss Lorraine looked down at the floor. I had just been listening to Uncle Walter in the back of the room. I never considered that what happened to Uncle Butch was more than an accident. I brushed my hand over Mom's sleeve. It slid up. I noticed bruises. This was something I'd seen a few times before. Each time I saw it, it caused an ache in my gut and the feeling of wrong. Mom was quick to pull her sleeve back down. What does it mean to play games with God? I asked Mom. The Bible says to be cold or hot. If you are lukewarm, God will spit you out of his mouth. It means you choose good or bad. There's nothing between. Her words confused me more. I never thought of Uncle Butch as bad. In fact, when he cuffed up my dad for hurting my mom, I found Butch to be downright good. My father stood behind a pulpit, but he put his hand on Mom. That was worse, I thought, than anything Uncle Butch had ever done. The photo of the accident came back to my mind. Then what Miss Lorraine said, the Reverend told Butch a fiery death. It came true. It was Reverend Hugel who gave a sermon at the funeral. He stood by Uncle Butch's urn. He was a big man with white hair and a black suit. When he spoke, his voice was so deep that I felt it in my chest. It silenced the room. The Reverend gave us our due warning. We have a choice, God or Satan. Every man will die and stand before the Lord. Don't play games with God lest you end up like Butch, Reverend said. Do you know this day, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you were to die, you'd make heaven your home, he asked. I shivered all over when he asked this. To the Reverend's question, I thought, I do not know. At the end of his sermon, folks went up to the Reverend in tears. He prayed for them as they stood with their heads held low. I wanted to go up too, but I was afraid I couldn't move. After the service, we all stepped outside the funeral home. I stood between my parents, regretting I hadn't gone to the Reverend for prayer. I heard the rumble of a jet and spotted its stream in the sky. I grabbed Mom's hand and held it tightly. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tight against my collar and my tie, too scared to slip it loose. I imagined the jet would burst into flames overhead and crash down on us. It seemed, if the Reverend was right, that I played games with God. Same with my dad. Just like Butch, seemed a fiery death was fit for us all. I imagined Great Uncle Walter would stand with a photo of the plane crash that killed us. He'd find my skull with his clouded magnifying glass. It would be there in the heap of the funeral home's wreckage, cratered into the ground with black smoke rolling from the crash. And I said, thank you.
Wow, that was really incredible. Thank you so much. I really love the little details, especially with the goat. Um, that was really I mean, I love that kind of thing in a story where the plot is really important. The character is really important, but it's those little details that really do it. We even have somebody in the comments commenting on the same thing. Penny Tavares says Lucifer sounds rightly named. So yeah,
Oh, they could be.
yeah, well, is this a real character that you know, this Lucifer the goat?
You know what's interesting? I always start my fiction with an origin of truth, right? So I did have an uncle who died tragically with two cousins, and they were struck by a train. But you know, our memories, our readers, you know, we have to understand when you write fiction, you don't, you have a relationship with the reader, right? And they don't have accesses to the recesses of my mind. So from there, I fictionalized it. But he did have a goat, but I don't remember his name. But I do remember that quick dash from the car to Uncle Butch's trailer, because that goat would get your rear if you didn't get there fast enough. So Lucifer's definitely a good name.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. I love it. I just love it.
Yeah, a goat named after Lucifer the goat. It seems like the right name for like if you're going to apply it to be the provost somewhere. Lucifer the goat.
Lucifer the goat, yes. I think he was a former provost at Clarion before they merged, though. I don't know.
I don't have anything to say. No, I'm really sorry. I muted myself, so I didn't like you didn't hear my typing my notes, and somehow I did just it was a different button to unmute myself than because I disconnected everything. It feels like you're gesturing toward being the Flannery O'Connor of Central Pennsylvania in this story. With all of the sort of spiritual business and the people being wrapped up in this and the sort of, you know, as almost the sort of surface layer of stuff and then the subtext of all this other business and turning to the, you know, the drink and the Lord spitting people out of his mouth. And I feel like you're really playing with some powerful stuff. So that's super cool, Michael. And by the way, I see now why you are because I wanted to make you the Flannery O'Connor of a particular town in central Pennsylvania. So I was looking up your bio, and I see why you are Mikey Lockett or Michael Lockett author, because if I Google Michael Lockett, you don't look much like the famous bodybuilder.
I don't. And there's also another guy who's a writer and storyteller called Dr. Mike Lockett. So I don't, unfortunately, resemble the bodybuilder, and I don't have the title of the other Michael Lockett. So I'm stuck being the Flannery O'Connor of Central Pennsylvania for whatever earth. I'll take it. That's a big compliment. But yeah, definitely, I grew up with that, you know, fundamentalist Pentecostal holiness background, so it was definitely very formative to my childhood and the material I write, for sure. So,
you know, if you just changed one letter, you could be Mikey Rocket, and man, you could do something with that. Tattoos, logos, hats, T-shirts.
Definitely. Omits the Flannery O'Connor piece for sure.
Well, that's true.
I have a more exciting life. I'm definitely going to take that into consideration for sure.
So
this book is almost new. It's like brand spanking new, right?
Like brand spanking, like a month out. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like being having your debut collection out? How's that been for you? What have you been up to?
Well, you know, you're both wonderful writers, and so you understand that we're very neurotic people, right? So it's hard to take a minute to celebrate some accomplishment and not just perseverate on everything I feel like I need to do to try to market a book. So, so I wake up with panic attacks, and I'm still anxious about it. And so yeah, you just want to share your work when you pour your heart into something. And I worked on this for a long time, so it's understand. Anyone who writes understands. I think I say all the time, your stats for a publication are probably a little less of a 1% shot. the rule of thumb, submit 100, you might get one. So it's always a big dream, and then you never expect it'll happen, and then it happens, and then you say, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So that's where I'm at. But it's a wonderful thing, and I'm trying to take that moment to just be excited and grateful.
Cool. Should you show us the cover of the book a little
We
bit?
actually have a number of comments
Okay, cool.
as well.
Let's check those comments out. Thank you, Mike.
Yes. So from Courtney Suzanne, amazing, my friend.
Oh, nice. I may know.
Go
This
ahead.
is my best. I love her.
Oh, I love it when besties join in. Donna Zarilla, who's also a friend of ours. Wonderful reading, Michael.
I love Donna.
Yeah, she's great. Jennifer Hillman said, thank you. Melissa Pritchard also said, amazing. Love it. It's all great stuff. Jerry Rieger, who's a regular watcher as well, hold on a minute, said, I don't know what happened just there. This is an interesting story of the vernacular is very believable. I meant to say that too. I thought the language was very, sometimes, you'll listen to a story or read a story and you think, wow, they're really trying too hard. But I felt like the vernacular here was really spot on, like Jerry thinks too. And that the characters are well drawn and full.
Nice. It is my vernacular. Oh, there's nothing today. Everything we try to learn to hide, and then at some point in your life, you're like, no, I'm proud of how I talk. I'm proud of where I'm from. And that's what's nice too is, hearing from like Courtney and Melissa Pritchard is that the people back home are so receptive. Like I'm a first generation college student. Not that that's a big deal, but it's the reality is that, I come from a place where we struggle to get by. And I've always struggled to get by. I still struggle to get by. That's a reality for a lot of people. So not everyone has the opportunity to be able to sit and have the privilege to pen certain things. So I think there's an excitement from people back home that we're set loose on paper too, which is nice.
Yeah, and if we want to say Warshfrag, we'll say Warshfrag.
Yeah.
Penny says, I love the accent. Yes. I love the accent that you use. That's what Penny says to further draw us into the story. Lots of people have joined in. Judy Cartwright said, watching too. I've read almost the whole book. That's good.
Keep up the good work, Judy.
Somebody who knows you really well. Melissa says, amazing work. Love it, big brother. That's so sweet.
Is that somebody you know?
It's my sister.
Oh, good.
And Judy Cartwright says, we are very excited. But I want to end our comments with a question from Karen Bryant. She says,
wait, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't a comment, but I do want to point out, I was looking up, I was doing some research on Mikey's book, and Gita Kalhari, who is a really terrific author, said it is a big-hearted collection and had some other high praise for it.
Oh.
So I did want to point that out. Gita's a wonderful writer. So I just wanted to, this is being praised by some other folks as well.
Gita's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So that's a big compliment for sure.
So Karen says, powerful reading. Question for you. I've read 2 other stories in your book and you display such vulnerability. How did you allow yourself to get to that point? Most writers spend years and never reach that.
Oh, I guess that's the space where I take it, right? Like I feel like I'm a poker face through life. So I'm always crumbling on the inside somewhere and laughing. The origin, sorrow and laughter come from the same source, right? The manifestation is just different. So it's definitely been a safe space for me, and a space where I can take all those things. And I think there's something that is protective in fiction, right? Like I can take an origin in truth, but in fiction I can manipulate it. And at the end of the day, if someone has something to say, I can say, well, you know what? It's just fiction. So
Krista Wilkinson said that to me at one of her readings afterwards. I was asking her about, do you ever talk about yourself in your fiction? Because she does this in her poetry, obviously. And she said, well, we'll never know what's really about me or what's really not about me because it's fiction. And so those are thoughts as well.
Yeah, it's a manipulation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have one more comment, and I think I need to bring this up. Thank you for sharing your amazing talent, Mikey. We're so proud of you and love you. That's from Eric Lockett, also a relative.
He might be my awesome big tough older brother who's always looked out for me, and he's so wonderful. And it's always funny because I always say he's my brother and he's super tough, right? I'm not, but no one ever messed with me, or if they did, they would find out who my brother was, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, give me $5 just to make sure it never happens again, and I won't have to talk to my brother. So for sure, he's a good, means a lot that he, especially this piece. I think of him a lot with this piece because I think a lot of the origin of truth would fit with him a lot. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. And I encourage everyone to go out and get a copy of this. I know you can find it obviously on the bookstore that will remain nameless, but there are other places that people can find it too, including right from the Sunbury Press page, right?
yeah, anywhere fine books are sold.
Very nicely said. Support your local bookstore.
Oh,
Yes.
and before we go tonight, Christine and I were talking about this earlier today. I know some of our other friends, Sean Hoppenthaler, some other people, that the Gettysburg College has elected in their infinite stupidity, frankly, to close the Gettysburg Review. I think this is a tremendous loss for literature, and particularly literature proximate to our region. This is one of the leading literary magazines. If you feel that you might want to opine on that, please check out Gettysburg Review's Twitter feed or Facebook page for information on how to write or call the president and the provost of Gettysburg College and voice your support for the review and your disappointment with this foolish decision.
Yes, absolutely. We have to stand up to people.
I mean, Mark Drew is an amazing editor. I met him at the Conversations and Connections, and Gettysburg Review has been publishing wonderful writers for a very long time. It is one of the marquee publications in the United States, and it would be so unceremoniously and closed is just an absolute shame. And if we can do something to make the powers that be understand how important it is, please, if you want to get on board with that, please do so.
Well, and they're just as in, their reputation is just as important for whom they have published as who they have rejected. People we know that are amazing writers haven't even had the opportunity to get their work in their pages. And that says a lot about the quality of the work that's been in the Gettysburg Review for the past 35 years. So we need to stand up against this. So anyways, thank you all. And thanks, Damien, for noting that. And we'll see you all next week. Same place, same time. Thanks again, Mikey.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.